I am massively excited today to have a little time with my dear friend and colleague, Beverley Glick, who has just published a fantastic and incredible book, in your own words, which we're going to talk about today. A little bit about Bev, for those of you who haven't had the joy of working with her over the years. She is both an incredibly insightful speaking coach and a brilliant book midwife, I suppose you could say. She helps professionals to write books, and now is the moment when she has finally produced her own book. So a few notes of where that came from in her career. She started off as a journalist in the 80s, what we call our legendary rock journalist. Bev was the one who coined the term the New Romantics. She was editor at Record Mirror, for those of you who remember it, at NME. She was deputy editor of the Observer Life magazine, editor at Sunday Telegraph magazine, Sunday Express, ... Incredibly epic journalistic career. And Bev, as you say in the intro to your book, you are a words millionaire. How does that feel?
That feels amazing. And it was quite an exercise, actually, when a friend of mine asked me how many words I'd had published over the years. I never thought about it before, so I did a very quick back of the envelope calculation. And I sort of rounded it up a bit to a nice round 2 million. But that's words that I've had published in newspapers, magazines, online, all paid for. So this doesn't include my own blogging.
Yeah, and now finally your book. Tell us a little bit about the concept of the book.
So I started writing this book, like so many other people, at the beginning of the first lockdown. And there were two things that were converging for me at that time. I'd noticed how rapidly our language was changing because of the lockdowns. And my mum was declining cognitively and her language was disappearing, if you like. So there were these two things that came together, and it really made me look at words in a different way. And with the help of my friend and mentor, Nick Williams, who wrote the foreword of the book, I came up with this outline of, let's look at the different stages of life, and my life in particular, for the first part of the book. What are the most significant words that are still in my consciousness from each stage of my life? And that turned into this idea of a life dictionary. So what the book does is that helps you compile your life dictionary. So at the beginning, I invite the reader to become the lexicographer of their own life.
I think it's a brilliant concept, and it really connects into your superpower from a ginger perspective of storytelling, and the idea that we can find our stories by identifying the significant words in our life. That's really helpful for people, right? Like, people find it difficult to tell stories, I think, and this is a great access point.
Yes, they do. And obviously, as you say, I've worked with many people through Ginger on storytelling programs. And of course, you come again up against a lot of the same comments. Like, I don't know where to start. Why would anybody be interested in me and my story? But it's not appropriate to business. Or I've even had someone say to me, I don't want to tell stories. It undermines my research. So hopefully I have reframed storytelling a little bit. Obviously, this is very much about personal storytelling, which, some people do have resistance to that in a business context, and we can talk more about that if you like. But for me, the process of examining your life in this way is super important if you're any type of leader, whether you're a speaker, a writer, or you've got all of those things. It's very important for leadership to understand your own story and be in charge of your own narrative.
So tell me a bit more about how it works. You've got some amazing words in the book, like fetish, dominatrix, all the way through to God. And if someone is wanting to find their own words, what do they do, and how does that connect to finding a story?
Okay, so you can go through the book in sequence. You can start with your childhood and look at your significant words from childhood, or you can start somewhere else at a different life stage. You might go to, for instance, midlife words, because that's where you are in your life, and you can think, okay, what are the words here I am now in midlife. What are my significant words, and what stories are they telling about how I see myself, my life, what I believe, what motivates me? So really the words are like gateways or access points into what creates meaning for you. And that's where you can find the stories. So I think what it does, well, I hope what it does, and the feedback has been that this does work for people who actually have experienced this. It's like, wow, I've just realized that there's a word from my childhood that's connected to what's happening to me now. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So a friend of mine read the book when it came out, and she told me about a blanket that she carried with her for 5 years when she was a child. And she remembered that she used to stuff it in her mouth to comfort herself. And on reflection, through the process in the book, she realized it was a metaphor for not speaking up later in life. So I don't think that she would have made that connection if she hadn't gone through this process. So not only does it give you access to these memories, which are stories, but it also helps you form connections to where you are now. And that's where the meaning is.
And I think we can see, as, let's say, leaders within organizations, we can see that a lot of us want to tell stories, but we don't know how to do it in a way that's human. And what I always observe is that stories that come out, like business case studies, are really, really dull, and they don't have very much impact. So I suppose here there's an invitation to go a bit more personal. And how do you make sure that that then connects into the business context?
Yeah, there's always going to be that question in people's minds: what's appropriate for me to share in a business context? And one of the things I underline many times in the book is that this is your choice, it's your story, you choose what you share and how you present it. So there's really no point in something sharing intensely personal information if it's not in service of your audience. It's all about how can I serve? And obviously at Ginger, we talk a lot about being a servant leader. This applies to storytelling as well. Why am I telling this story? Why am I telling it now? Does it serve the message that I'm trying to share? It's all connected. So again, another of my earlier reviewers has got a talk coming up soon. So she needs to talk about her journey, right? So how she got to where she is today. And she says that the book's really helped her work out what she might say. So I think professionals can use this life dictionary technique to find stories to use in whatever communication context is relevant. Definitely can do that. You know, I could say, I could use any one of my words and come up with a longer talk about it because I've reflected on the meaning of it and what I want to communicate by talking about that word. But you can also use the process as a reflective tool for personal or leadership development.
Yeah.
So it's very much putting you in charge of your story and thinking, what is it about my story and my journey through life that I can take and use to be of service?
Great. And I wonder, can you give us an example, a snippet, if you will, a little sneaky peek into your book? What's one of your favorite words and stories attached?
Well, I'm going to read from the book now briefly, and this is a very relevant word to our conversation. So one of my words is spoken. And just to give you a bit of context, the word before that is unspoken. So just to bear that in mind. So here's my story about the word spoken. Oh, the relief. An antidote to the unspoken, that which most definitely is said. Shout it from the rooftops. Spoken is here. Too late, unspoken. The word is out. I wouldn't usually sprinkle exclamation marks known in the newspaper trade as screamers through my writing, but the release of energy is palpable. I had to express it on the page, especially after the straitjacket of unspoken. After all, words are vibrations. Once out, they're out, so watch out. I have spoken. There's a dynamic quality to the word. Action has been taken to communicate. Feelings have been expressed, ideas shared. In the world of words, spoken is the companion of written, and this is the story of how I came to travel from the written to the spoken word. Having been a wordsmith for so long, it was never on my radar to dabble in the spoken word. Throughout my years with a high-profile byline, and then afterwards in the role of invisible mender, I didn't need to be the spoken one. My only experience of public speaking had been in 1988, when I was editor of the pop magazine Record Mirror. I'd been invited to speak at the Oxford Union, the most prestigious university debating society in the country, if not the world. Accustomed to entertaining the great and the good who usually took part in worthy political debates, the debating society occasionally injected some light relief. The debate to which I'd been invited was one of the fun ones. The motion I'd been asked to speak to was, has rock and roll lost its balls? It's a question that I'd go on to answer in the affirmative. I prepared by writing a script, which I planned to read out to the assembly. I didn't really think about it much more than that. So when I rocked up to Oxford University that afternoon, it quickly dawned on me what I'd signed up for. The chairman of the debating society asked me to sign the visitor's book, a leather-bound tome containing the signatures of prime ministers, presidents, and other notables, and little old me. When I was escorted into the debating chamber, I discovered it was a miniature replica of the House of Commons, complete with a dispatch box, a training ground for many British politicians, including Boris Johnson. Feeling like a complete imposter, I shuffled onto a bench, waiting my turn like a witness at a murder trial. When it was time for me to speak, I stood next to the dispatch box, gripping my script and reading my argument to the best of my ability, while making little or no eye contact with the assembled students. When the ordeal was over, I scuttled back to my seat and vowed never to do any public speaking again, although my joke about the pop brand Bros did get a laugh. And my side won the debate, meaning that rock and roll officially lost its balls in 1988. Then I stayed in my writing and editing comfort zone for the next 25 years. And it goes on after that to tell the story of how I met you, Sarah, and how I started on my public speaking journey and became a ginger trainer. And it's been 10 years this year that I've been a ginger trainer.
Another point to celebrate. We'll have a
Yeah.
we'll have a little glass of something over that another day. And you know, I think what I love about that story is the resonance of going through a fear, going through a really common fear that most of us can feel viscerally. We can be with you right there. And I think for leaders, like we look to our leaders now for that sense of empathy, vulnerability, humanity, in order to be able to trust them. And so that's a great example of something that most of us probably have some similar sort of story in association with our own fears. So that, I suppose, is the challenge that we take to your audience. What would somebody do next if they wanted to have a look at the book and buy it?
Well, you can either go, you can buy the book from like literally all good bookshops. There on my website, there's a whole list of different booksellers all over the world that you can buy from, mostly Amazon in the rest of the world, in fact. But, you know, if you're not a big fan of Amazon, there are other options. Or you can go to my website, beverleyglick.com, and you can download the first 3 chapters for free by signing up to my mailing list. So if you want to try before you buy, you can do that as well. So please go and explore that option. And I'd just love to hear stories from people when they've read the book. You know, what stories have they found? It's like that friend of mine who'd found that story about the blanket was one, and another one said it was just so much fun asking my family about my childhood stories and my childhood words, and asking her mother about what her first words were. So it's all about storytelling, being this great connector, human to human, and that's what I love to hear.
And maybe we can challenge those listening to this video to also share a word underneath. I'll do the same. A word that came out of this process for me was weirdly Budleigh Salterton, which I'll explain below. Yeah, and so there are also other ways of working with you, right, Bev? Bev is, as we mentioned before, an absolutely fantastic storytelling trainer within the Ginger team, where she runs a storytelling mastery program, amongst other things. We can work one-to-one with you, can we, Bev?
Yes, you certainly can. You can contact me through my website if you're interested in working one-to-one with me on any form of story coaching, really, but particularly support in putting together your life dictionary. That's just something that I'm going to start doing. And I just find the idea so exciting to help people piece together their whole life narrative, which is something else I talk about in the book. You know,
Brilliant.
what
I know
is the whole story? What's the whole story you're telling?
that's right. And I know for me that, storytelling doesn't necessarily come easily, but having the central focus of that challenge of what is one word for a certain time and place of your life, it's just so easy and refreshing, and a great simple way to access storytelling. So best of luck with the brilliant book, Bev. Please go and buy it if you haven't got it already. And yeah, may this book benefit many people, because it is really fantastic. Thank you, Bev.
Thank you, Sarah.